I'm a 41-year-old woman and live in Montana. A few years ago, I was forced to relocate after my landlord decided to rent to her son. The community I had lived in for 11 and a half years has become incredibly expensive. $787,000 median home price. Unfortunately, I was forced to relocate to another city, and because of the unexpected move and associated costs, I moved in with a roommate. My roommate left to pursue better job prospects about 3 months after I moved in. Our unit was a triplex, so there were 2 gentlemen that inhabited the other units. I was never added to the lease as the property manager required a full deposit, and I was not in a financially healthy spot at the time. I remained in the unit for a year and a half on my own, paying the rent and utilities. I became very good friends with the man in the unit closest to mine. We will call the man Devin, a 52-year-old guy. Devin was a disabled veteran in recovery. I also am a veteran, so he held a soft spot in my heart. We shared meals, hung out, and discussed all of life's mysteries, and would look out for one another. Devin had gone to treatment for 6 weeks, and I had watched his cat while he was gone. Our friendship developed over the course of a year and a half. Devin had expressed romantic interest. However, right from the beginning, I clearly informed Devin that I did not share those feelings and we would never be more than good friends. Devin seemed to be lonely, which made sense. However, I'm a person who requires alone time to recharge my batteries. I set strict boundaries for Devin as he wanted to hang out all of the time. I would catch him walking through the front yard multiple times a day to get the mail, which I believed was to see if I was outside so he could stop to chat. When I would leave in the morning to go to work, Devin was always outside to tell me I looked nice and to have a good day. I told him that made me feel uncomfortable and he should just send a text letting me know if he wanted to hang out and wait for a response. There were a couple of times I yelled at him for overstepping my boundaries. The first, I had just got home and pulled into my garage. I was on a phone call and had stayed in the car. Devin looked through the garage window to see if I was home. I was annoyed but didn't really think much of it. The second, I was getting dressed in my room in the summer, so the window was cracked. I felt this was safe as the window was not in a place that anyone should be walking by, as it was in my patio at the back of the home. I caught Devin peeking through. I lost it. I let Devin know under no uncertain terms his behavior was inappropriate and that if he didn't respect my boundaries, we would no longer be friends. Last year, while I was still in the home, I had asked Devin to watch my dog for a couple of days so I could go to a family event out of state. Devin was happy to help, and I was very appreciative. Not long after I returned, I started to notice strange things in my home, but I really just thought it was me. For instance, I would be fairly certain I had locked my door in the morning when I left for work, but when I returned it would be unlocked. I would be sure I had shut off all the lights, but when I got home in the evening, one would be on. I really just thought it was absent-mindedness. Fast forward a couple of months and my mom became sick with cancer. My sister watched my dog while I went to tend to my mom. My sister reached out to me and asked if anyone else had a key to my apartment. I let her know she had the only spare key but asked why. Similarly, she had experienced the same issues with lights and locks. I had not shared my concerns with my sister prior to her communicating hers with me, as I really just doubted my own sanity. While I was out of town, I received a text message from Devin asking if I had a potato he could borrow. I let him know I was out of state with my mom who was sick. Devin did not reply, which was out of character, but I had noticed a change in Devin's affect. He was more reserved and less friendly towards me, I thought it probably had to do with my firm adherence to my boundaries, which was okay. He didn't have to like them, just respect them. When I got back to town one night, I stayed over at my sister's house after helping her move. As mentioned above, I was struggling financially, so I would carefully budget and plan my weekly meals. The morning before my sister's move, I had placed 3 pieces of bacon into a Ziploc bag to be used later for a BLT. When I returned the following morning, much to my disbelief, there were only 2 pieces of bacon. I held the bag in my hands knowing that there had been 3. No longer did I doubt myself. I called my sister and let her know that someone had been getting into my house. I always keep the place locked. The only logical thing that could have happened is Devin made a copy of my key when he had watched my dog in the fall. My sister reminded me about the potato text. The potato in the counter basket was gone. I had enough information to be certain my neighbor had violated my trust and was no friend. However, I still wasn't afraid of him. As I mentioned, he is a disabled vet and was somewhat feeble and sickly. I was not scared of a confrontation. I immediately went to the hardware store and purchased a camera that streams to your phone once the motion detector has been activated. I placed it facing the side door where Devin would enter. It also had 2-way audio capability, so my plan was that when Devin decided to enter my home again, I would see it and say over the camera something to the effect of, "Get the hell out of my house, put the key you copied on the counter, and never try to speak with me again or I will contact law enforcement." As I wrote above, I was not on the lease and did not want to be homeless, so I could not turn to the property manager for help, and Devin knew it. In the evenings, I started placing a jug of cat litter and a kitchen chair in front of the door that I knew Devin was accessing the apartment from, but I never expected he would attempt to come in while I was at home, and really, he had only taken a piece of uncooked bacon and a potato. Laying on the couch one night watching TV, I thought that I had heard something sliding on the floor in the laundry room where the door was, but I knew there was no way he would come in while I was home. My cat was running around playing, so I decided it was probably just her and I was being paranoid because of all that had happened. The next morning, while changing my laundry, I noticed the litter and chair had been pushed 3 to 4 inches. I checked the sensitivity of the camera and found that I was able to replicate by slowly opening the door. Devin tried to come in while I was home. Why? That morning, I took bear spray into the shower with me while my knees knocked. I was terrified. I felt vulnerable and violated. Devin knew that I knew now also. He knew that I had placed a barrier in front of the door. After that morning, he was never outside in the morning, nor did he walk through the yard to get his mail. I obtained a firearm for protection and did make a police report. The police officer was annoyed with me as I did not want him to approach Devin, as all Devin would need to do is report me to the property manager and I would be homeless. I am grateful that whatever he was up to was apparently thwarted. The fact that he tried to come in while he knew I was home gives me the heebie-jeebies. I wonder if he went through my underwear, watched me while I slept, etc. Since then, my situation has greatly improved. I ended up moving out shortly after to take care of my mom. I got my own place again a few months ago. I will never put my trust in another neighbor for pet or house sitting again. It still blows my mind that I had some douchebag stealing from and likely stalking me. This story just solidifies one should always trust their gut. There were so many times that a red flag was screaming, and I just thought I was being crazy. For context, I live in a small trailer court in the Midwest, and directly next to us is a railway that goes across the whole state and leads to a Wally World if you head down it for 20 minutes. I was a teenager in 8th grade at the time with no car or transportation other than a bike. The railroad tracks go in a straight line directly leading to Walmart. So if I were to bike to the Walmart, it takes me about the same time as if I walk straight down the tracks. So more often than not, I would walk, as I was never really a big fan of riding bikes, as I have had back issues since a young age. On this date in particular, I decided to head to Walmart for dumb kid stuff shortly before the sun was about to set. This detail will come into play later. Basically, I went to the store and got distracted just looking around, bought some food and drink and some trading cards, but left as the sun was going down. It's about a 20 to 25 minute walk home, and I decided to head down the tracks again. At about the 10-minute mark, it was getting very dark, and I was a generally fearful and anxious child due to my autism. I was scared of the dark until I was about 14 and a half, and would often have nightmares or see things that weren't there in my closet or dark corners, etc. So as it became too dark to see, I was getting extremely nervous and hypervigilant. 5 minutes later, I could swear I was hearing footsteps crunching in the rocks lining these tracks that weren't mine. I stopped a few times to listen and confirmed someone was walking towards me from a significant distance away. I could not see them at this point because of the darkness and lack of lighting across the railroad tracks. I had no phone or flashlight of any kind. At this point, I started freaking out internally. At first, I didn't know what to do, but as the sound of the footsteps got closer, I decided to call out and let them know I was coming towards them. I stopped as I did this and said something along the lines of, "Is someone there?" While I know this might seem silly as an adult, I was used to my brain playing tricks on me in darkness, and I was convinced I was hearing things. No response. At this point, the footsteps were getting closer, but still difficult to distinguish over my own. So I stopped. The footsteps continued for a brief moment, and then they stopped too. I called out again. I said, "Hello, is anyone there?" No response again. I was still prepubescent and I had a child's voice. I feel like any reasonable adult would have responded and said yes or "yeah, I'm just walking" or whatever, as I had genuine, noticeable fear in my voice. After I received no response again, I told myself I was just imagining it and continued on my journey, at this point being just under 15 minutes from my house. And I heard them again. Footsteps coming closer as soon as I started walking. At this point, fear took over, and I started yelling and making whooping sounds, thinking it might be some sort of animal. I yelled things such as, "I know you're there," and "I have a knife," which was total BS, but thought it might encourage this person to respond. Still nothing. A few times as I was speaking, I would hear the footsteps stop again. Finally, about 3 to 5 minutes later, stopping multiple times and hearing his footsteps stop. Sorry, I can't give a super specific time frame. I was in total fight or flight, scared out of my mind, so it gets a little hazy from here. I start seeing this guy materialize out of the darkness. He had on blue jeans, a dark hoodie with the hood completely masking his face from a distance. I was instantly relieved for whatever reason. Relieved to know I wasn't crazy, maybe, I don't know. And began verbal vomiting to this guy that I was just scared. And I didn't know that he was on the tracks for sure. He again did not respond, and this was before mainstream Bluetooth audio, and I didn't notice any headphones cables even when I passed him. Because he didn't respond, I was eyeing him warily as he approached, and we locked eyes. I'll never forget the chill that ran down my spine. He was staring at me coldly and blankly, with a menacing look in his eyes like he was thinking about what to do. He had his hands shoved in his pockets, and as I was passing him, he looked like he was going to pull something out of them in his right hand. I was a very scrawny kid, and even though I have back problems, I was fast as hell. I just hurt from running for too long. From then on, going down the tracks at a full sprint, it was all a blur. I tripped and fell twice, as well as soaked myself in mud when I tried to get across the small ditch separating the track from the trailer park, and got home. I never told my mom, and I never walked on those tracks at night again. After reading through this again, I thought I would describe the tracks a bit for context. They are on an elevated hill next to the trailers, and you can either walk a minute in the wrong direction to get on at the main road I live on, or you can cut through this one small spot where some people had put a board down for that exact purpose, to get across the ditch and onto the tracks. The board was broken in half and partially submerged, so it was kinda like you had to jump and land on the board with one foot, and then kick off to the other side. The ditch is maybe 3 feet across, so it's not a huge jump, but it always has nasty standing water in it. Once you get on the tracks, there is a super long stretch with absolutely no way off, other than private property of a factory the railway delivers goods to, which you can get in trouble for trespassing on. Then there's a junction about 20 minutes down, and another 5 minutes from there is where Walmart is. Due to this, I couldn't just get off the tracks when I ran away. I had to get to the ditch before I would be able to. If you're into true crime shows or channels, you may have heard this story before, or at least the main details. I've seen it covered in several myself. Here's some context. This event happened 11 years ago. I had just turned 18 and moved to Orange County, California. I moved into an apartment complex near the community college I was attending, so a bunch of younger people around my age lived there. I didn't know a single person in California, so I would take any opportunity to socialize and meet new people. A big gathering place at the complex was at the main pool where people would drink and relax in the sun. Over the first few months, I would meet a bunch of people while hanging out at the pool. I never got super close to any of them, but I would see these same people several days a week. We would often go back to each other's apartments after the pool to drink or smoke some more. It was a really mellow and fun environment. 3 people I would see all the time were Sarah, Mike, and John. One day after hanging out at the pool, Sarah, my girlfriend, and I went back to my apartment. The 3 of us smoked and Sarah went back home. Regular day. The next day we were at the pool and there were a few of the usual people missing, but still a solid 10 people, so we didn't really notice. We go home later that night and my girlfriend gets a call from one of our friends. My girlfriend playfully answers her phone, and the expression on her face starts to change. She's just listening and her eyes get super wide. She says, "What the hell, are you effing serious?" and hangs up the phone. I'm super confused, so I ask her, What happened?" She says, "Dude, the police just found Sarah dead in Mike's apartment and Mike is nowhere to be found." What the? It was insane. I asked her if he said anything else, but she told me he was really hard to understand. We went to bed and met up with the usual crowd at the pool the next day, which included John and his fiancée. We're all talking about how unbelievable this is. Sarah was the epitome of sweet, and Mike was easily one of the kindest people I'd ever met. He was one of the first people I met when I moved, and he gave my underage ass some beer and told me stories. These were both good people that didn't make any sense. We all kind of started speculating and just tried to make sense of it. Nobody can get a hold of Mike. We all start to worry if he's safe. Somebody suggests that Mike probably killed Sarah, panicked, and ran. That was a hard pill to swallow for most of us, but it was the only thing that kind of made sense. John shook his head and said, "Man, just awful." We all dispersed and went home. It would be the last time that I would see most of those people. Fast forward a month or two. I was hanging out in my apartment one evening when my girlfriend calls me frantically. "Please come to my friend's apartment, you are not going to believe this. This is the most effed up stuff I've ever experienced," she said. I rushed over to the apartment where she was. She was with two friends we knew from the pool. One of them was crying hysterically while the other sat with him. My girlfriend motioned for me to go outside, and the other friend stayed back to keep consoling the other. Once we were out of earshot, she told me why her friend was crying so intensely. Her friend had just got back from being with the police. He was asked to identify pieces of a dismembered body that were found in the sewer. He was crying because he positively identified the body parts as Mike's. How did the police know they were there? They knew because John told them he did it. Turns out John was and still is a broke piece of garbage. This guy was engaged and didn't have enough money for his wedding. Being a damn smart person, Mike had a bunch of money saved up. John found out about it and decided to kill Mike and steal his money. John was an acting student and asked Mike to help him move some heavy things at the theater. When Mike's back was turned, John shot him. He then took Mike to another location where he dismembered his body and dumped the remains in the sewer. John took Mike's keys and phone, and then went back to Mike's apartment. From there, he texted Sarah on Mike's phone, asking for her to come over because he wanted to talk. Being the sweet and caring person she was, Sarah went over to Mike's apartment to help him feel better. When she got there, John snuck up behind her and shot her. He left the apartment and framed Mike for Sarah's murder. John was caught because he's a stupid freaking idiot. He paid some kid to withdraw money from Mike's ATM account. Cops found the kid and he told them about John. They quickly tracked John down at his bachelor party, and he was taken in for questioning where he would admit that he murdered Sarah and Mike. He would later be sentenced to death. After sentencing, Mike's dad spoke to John across the courtroom and said, "My only regret is that the state of California doesn't allow me to kill you myself." Turns out his fiancée tried to help him hide evidence and she was sentenced to time as well. All in all, pretty dark story. Aside from the violence, what messes me up is that this guy had literally just murdered two of our friends and he was at the pool, commiserating with us, like genuinely acting upset, sad, and confused. He's a horrible human and I hope he suffers for the rest of his life. My deepest and continued condolences go out to the family of the two innocent people that were killed.